I can't unsee The Last Men because I'm constantly comparing this society to historic societies. And weird thing about modernity versus pre-modern is there are differences. There's more continuities from the world 2000 years ago to today than almost any modern people think. But there are differences in modern and pre-modern societies. And one of the ones I kept spotting was just the staggering absence of masculinity in leadership today. And if people ask me, Rudyard, why do you think the system's still going to fall? It's because this is a system which has designed itself to be utterly inflexible through bureaucracy with no place for masculine leadership. And it's already barreling towards failure. And it is removed all of the mechanisms to redirect.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. You know, that again, one of the stunning things, and this is what me think, what how I can tell we really are in the age of last men here, is there seems to be nothing that will trigger a violent response. Like
Yeah.
something, nothing seems radical enough, right? Like someone can steal your kids from you and chop their genitals off. They can, and there's just no there seems to be no line, and that's stunning. I mean, again, that's what Nietzsche would have predicted, right? Like that it's any kind of conflict is too much. Anything that disrupts your ability to have the little creature comforts is too much. That this is how kind of the bug man, the last man, lives and dies. And there's nothing worth fighting or dying for. There's nothing worth agitating. Nothing worth going out and fighting for to prove a point. And you can tell this because, again, so many of these Western nations, no matter how tyrannical their governments get, there's just no there. You'll get a few riots in England. You might get one in Ireland. You might get January 6th in America. But ultimately, and Curtis Yarvin has pointed this out in a funny way, the way he frames it is Americans simply aren't virtuous enough to have a revolution anymore. We don't have that quality in us anymore, and he basically plans for that. This is kind of one of the things I don't like about Curtis, even though I think he's probably right at some level. His solutions are all based on the idea that we will never have a population capable of that level of violence, that level of vigor, that level of animating spirit again. And while of course I'm not hoping for violence, anybody who looks at history knows there at some point there has to be a line that doesn't get crossed, right? Like there has to be something that triggers your desire to defend yourself against existential threats. And it just seems, especially when you look at what happened with Charlie Kirk, the first thing that everybody ran out and did and says, nobody react, nobody react, nobody react. Now, in a sense, I get that, right? Like, again, I don't want vigilante violence. But at some level, there is a healthy level of anger and reaction that would come with something like that. But not only could the right not summon any kind of energy on that level, instead of even turning their guns, figuratively turning their governmental power on the left and destroying like left-wing terrorist organizations, they just made a circular firing squad and started sniping at their own conservatives.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting threads to pull at. I'll pick a few, but that's a rich topic. One of which is Nietzsche said the age of the last men could be brought down by 100 capable men because the age would produce such weakness and such indecision that it's profoundly weak. And I want to emphasize that. And I'm not black-pilled because I spend a lot of time in sort of conservative youth circles. And I think there is genuinely a tremendous amount of capability and willpower there that is being wasted. And when I look at the right, I just made a video analyzing my thoughts on the woke right. I know I'm a few months behind it, but inside it, I sort of talk about the anthropology of the modern right, and I give you a few good shout outs in there too. But one of the things I say is that you have ethnic conservatives, book conservatives, and internet conservatives. Did you get into conservatism from reading books from the internet, or are you from like a conservative hometown where it's a culture you grew up in? And these are wildly different, where the internet conservatives have sort of captured the movement online, and the internet conservatives have these weird incentive structures where they're always self-predating off each other because the contentious stuff is what gets big online. This doesn't really fit, but the institutional conservatives you could classify them as book conservatives. A lot of them are very academic and coastal, and they don't have a relation to red America. And then the ethnic conservatives can't get into the positions of power because I think there is the capability to stop this tyranny. It's just all of the mechanisms of power in our society are bureaucracies, and bureaucracies are naturally feed into the left. And so you have to make a leadership structure that's non-bureaucratic, that could displace the bureaucracies so we don't end up playing the left's game. And I think that's actually really possible and really sort of powerful, because if you make a non-bureaucratic leadership structure, it will utterly consume the bureaucracies by just being more competent and more capable.
I agree 100%. This is literally, a huge part of my argument, which I'm sure you're aware of. But I literally was just making this pitch to some rather important people, and this is critical. We have to address the structural issue here, that the system we are pushing is inherently going to keep us left wing. We can't avoid anything else. So
Yeah.
I think that is just so important, and it's extremely difficult because a lot of people can only, you totally understand it, but this recency bias, right? Like the way the world works now is the only way the world can work. There's just no other time or place we could, do this, or we've moved beyond the ability to have any other way that we could organize our societies. And so therefore, we're just stuck with Leviathan, and you just got to learn how to pilot Leviathan. And there are a lot of people I like who truly believe this. So like, it's just base Leviathan. That's all. I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what Sam Francis came to at the end of his, even though he understood how and why this mechanism drives us. He's like, but there's just no way to avoid this. So we've got to figure out how to drive this. But I'm 100% with you that because of the way we have structured our institutions, it will select for leftists. It will select for a particular type of manager leader who will have this very hyper feminized leadership style, will have this really agreeable, dissipated, really psychoanalyzed way to address all of these things, heavily therapeutic society. And until we break out of that, we will just be manufacturing the last man. We will create C.S. Lewis's Men Without Chess. We're a Man Without Chess factory at this point because of the way we structured society. And if you don't change that incentive structure and who gets selected and put into positions of power, then you can't get a circulation of elites that would actually change where we're going.
I made a system called Fluffy, and Fluffy is a leadership structure where you have 3 tiers, and you basically have competition inside an organization of people who rise to leadership, and then their employees choose which leader they want to follow. And so you have internalized competition inside an organization between these private leadership. And so you have competition from the top, that leaders who are not effective get axed by the system, or they get axed by the system. And you also have competition from below, that if you're not productive enough, you get pruned from the system. And so this is based off sort of earlier leadership systems that are non-bureaucratic, because the thing bureaucracy is missing is leadership. And leadership is the ability of the conscious mind to go through something and clean it out. And the reason our society feels so broken is we've totally removed leadership. So staggeringly irrational things occur because it's just unconscious.